Since ancient times, women have been the epicenter of their villages and communities around the world, and as such, have been gathering in council to discuss topics relevant to them. Here, we are masterminding and exploring these topics in a modern way with entrepreneurs, speakers, coaches, and just overall good eggs, pun intended. This is The Council. Today's guest is very special because I also had her as my own coach and mentor during my coach certification process. Her name is DePaola. She is an author, speaker, entrepreneur, and the founder of Inner Glow Circle, a company dedicated to helping women become professional certified life coaches and build profitable personal brands. This business has grown into a globally recognized professional training and certification program with nearly 600 students. Through Inner Glow Circle, Katie built the first all-women, all-online, ICF accredited coach training course, helping thousands of women start businesses of their own. If I could clap for that right now, I would. In her best-selling book, which I've read and is really excellent, At Least You Look Good, Learning to Glow Through What You Go Through, Katie shares her most vulnerable and often funny reflections of how to deal with the hardest parts of life and her best advice for people who want to, quote unquote, glow through what they go through. Katie is a fierce mental health advocate who built her business amidst challenging times, growing from a self-funded startup to $1 million business. She has been featured in Time, Entrepreneur, and Forbes, as well as over 50 podcasts. She also serves on the board of Bo's Effort, a foundation in memory of her late brother, Bo. Katie and I really dove into the topic of what it means to look good. And we don't just mean on the outside, but how does looking good support us in moving forward? Or how do our perceptions of how other people are doing make judgments of them in their lives and what they are or are not going through? So it's a lot about perspective today. And I really hope you enjoy. She is qualified to say the least, but really just a warm person. She has a wealth of knowledge. She does have some funny reflections and just a very relatable type of personality. So I hope you enjoy this conversation. So I'm super pumped to have you here. I feel like I've identified with your story since getting to know you through Inner Glow Circle, your coaching certification business and program. And a DC girl, so a girl after my own heart as well. But I'm really excited about today because I think this is a really important topic that it's funny, looking good is something like a topic. It sounds kind of like superficial, like what are we really going to dive into today? And I think a lot of it, as you talked about in your book, At Least You Look Good, is much more than just the surface level looking good, but feeling good. And how that's really showing up in the way that we move through our lives. So I'd love to know, maybe it would be good for everyone to hear a little bit just about your book and this overall topic and how it's kind of come to fruition and important to you in your life.
Yeah. So my book is called At Least You Look Good, Learning to Glow Through What You Go Through. And, my journey has been very much about figuring out how to be who I want to be in the world while facing the challenges of life. And, I think that we all have challenges that we can look at and say, okay, that can slow me down, or that can give me a new perspective. And so, back to back, I lost my youngest brother to an accidental overdose. I had just before that been diagnosed with chronic neurological Lyme disease. They told me that I had brain damage from the way the Lyme was attacking my full body. And then I went through a really, really bad breakup with someone that I was engaged to. And this all happened between 2014 and 2015. And so it's interesting, now it's been 6 years since Bo died. I'll use that as the marker because that's really kind of the pinnacle of everything for me. And, throughout the past 6 years, I've been learning how to find equilibrium, to heal, to keep going, and to keep glowing, as we talk about and as we talk about in the book. And so, I think it's been such a journey. And um, obviously you and I share a lot of things in common, but we share a lot of things with a lot of women and a lot of people. Like chronic illness is something, chronic pain, is something that so many people experience. And like now with COVID, health has a whole new meaning.
Mhm.
Loss, like I lost my brother. You have been talking about the loss of a pet, and it's a different kind of grief, but like every kind of grief is a different kind of grief, right? So it doesn't really matter like what you're grieving. Grief is grief. And we'll talk about this more, but for me, the book, At Least You Look Good, is a exploration. It's a memoir and it's self-help, but it's also an exploration of this idea as women, what role does looking good play in our lives? Is it important? Is it not important? Is it surface or is it deep? Does it help create our identities? And so I wrestle with a lot of those questions in the book as I'm dealing with my own healing process and having people say things to me like, you don't look sick, or you don't look like your brother just died, or you don't look like you just went through a breakup. And I was thinking the whole time, well, what do those things look like?
Mhm.
So it's really an exploration of that.
Mm. There's so much in everything you just said that I want to respond to. And I'm like, let
Let's
me
break it down.
yeah, there's so much. Um, I do think what kept coming up as you were saying that is that, when people talk about like, you never know what people are going to, so be kind to one another. And that
Yeah,
concept is like, surface level. Let's say you're exchanging emails with, a coworker and they're particularly sassy that day. It comes off that way. And it's that notion of like being kind because you don't really know what people are going through. But I think on
right.
the topic of like looking good, there is kind of this added layer of like, well, if you look good, you must feel fine, and I think in today's world, we do acknowledge a lot more mental health and anxiety, depression. Like you may not outwardly look like you're struggling, but you absolutely may be internally. And I think like, I think maybe it could also be helpful to defining like looking good and how that was showing up for you versus like that feeling good and how that was working for you.
Yeah. So there's a specific scene in the book. I don't want to like ruin it for you guys because I want you to go read it. But there's a specific scene in the book where I walk into my psychiatrist's office and she had been testing all these different medications on me. And like, I really felt like a lab rat, like, because nothing was working. I wasn't feeling good. I wasn't feeling better. If anything, I was feeling worse. And I walked in and I remember it's so funny that I'm saying this and that I'm wearing what I'm wearing because I was actually wearing these like hot red leggings like that exact day. And they're, you can't tell right now, but they're very like high waisted. And so I was wearing these like high waisted, fire engine red leggings and like a white little crop top. And I had just gotten a spray tan and I had gotten my lashes done, like lash extensions. And my hair had been recently colored and like I just was doing the normal maintenance things for me, right? Like to me, that was just, and every person's different, but for me, that was just like maintenance at the time. That was my routine. And
Mhm.
I remember I was feeling so, so horrible, like worse than I ever had. And I knew it was in large part because of these medications, but also I just in general wasn't feeling great, which was why she was trying these medications.
Mhm.
And I walk into her office and she looks at me and she's like, "Hi, it's so good to see you. How are you?" And I was like, I feel terrible." And
Mhm.
she said, "Well, you look really good."
Mhm.
And that was the moment where I had been playing with the title, At Least You Look Good, because it was something that people were saying a lot to me. I had heard people say variations of this to my mom, around her losing her son. And I had heard friends tell a lot of stories about, going through a breakup and losing 20 pounds, and their grandma saying, "You look so great, well, at least you look good." And it's like, well, yeah, okay. Like, I'm not going to say, like, don't say it to each other. Right. And I'm not going to say, I don't want you to tell me that I look good. Like, I can appreciate a compliment. However,
Mhm.
we can't have that be the bearing of how we measure each other. And it certainly can't be how we measure ourselves.
Mhm.
And so I really struggled with this whole thing of like, am I allowed to look good even though I feel like shit? And
Mhm.
if I feel like shit, and I kind of want people to know, like, I want the people around me to know that things aren't perfect. I want the people around me. I wasn't like trying to keep up appearances so that nobody would know what was going on with me. Like, I was very public about what I was going through. We were very public about my brother's passing. We, started a foundation in his honor, and we were hosting these big events. But it was like even the people close to me would forget what I had on my plate
Mhm.
because of how I looked. Not that I'm like the, most attractive person in the world by any means, or that you can even measure that, but because I prioritize putting myself together in a way that worked for me, right? And so it's just a really, really interesting reflection. It's an interesting thing to talk about. I've gone to book clubs around my book, and we've had long discussions with women about this exact topic. Like,
Mhm.
you know, do, does looking good cover up what we're going through? And
Mhm.
how do we, if we want to look a certain way, still look the way that we want to, but also not use it as a way to cover up what's real?
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I resonate so much with what you're saying because I think in part of the looking good for me, like I do my maintenance things, right? I'll get my nails done, I'll do my hair and makeup, I'll dress up, like those sorts of things are fun. But it's interesting both when I too was experiencing Lyme and just for like your context. So um gosh, this was probably 4 or 5 years ago at this point, maybe 4 years ago. I was diagnosed with Lyme disease, and it was,
Wow.
but it was really lucky that I was diagnosed when I was, because I was actually getting tested for my allergies, and I like to think this was a little bit of divine intervention. And I went, and they happened to be like, "How long have you had that bullseye on your leg?" And I'm like, "What?" And so they put me on an antibiotic, et cetera. And then
Wow.
I tested, I experienced the symptoms, and that's part of why I went to go see the allergist, because I was like, something's going on here. So I got really lucky in that they tested for it. However, I actually experienced symptoms even despite getting a negative test back after the fact. For the next 2.5 years, I had severe chronic pain. Like I was training for a marathon, and I couldn't even, like overnight, it almost felt like within a couple weeks, I was unable to run even a mile without extreme pain. Every time I was sitting down, a lot of the symptoms you talked about, like the candida, like there was also like the lactose intolerance, there's the gluten like
Hmm.
sensitivity, all of these things, the anxiety, like I was experiencing it all. And I went down the path of 2 years. Similarly, every other day I'm in a doctor's office. I've seen over like 20 doctors for this thing, like really in that, and all of them saying, "There's nothing wrong with you, and you look fine." And I was dating someone too who had a similar kind of, my friends and my boyfriend at the time had a similar perception of, well,
Sure.
you seem fine, like you're still going out on the weekends, or you're still getting dressed up, and but during the week I could barely get through the work week because I was in so much pain. Let alone
Yeah.
lifestyle, how it changes, right? You experience loss from like, I can't do and operate the way that I have been in my life. So
Yeah.
for me, it was like not even just the like appearance, but also like how I'm coming off. And then it's like, you said something in the book that I loved that was about like, I'm sick and tired of being sick and tired, and I'm sick and tired about talking about being sick and tired. And
Mhm.
I think this is where there is a little bit of a fine line with this looking good, because um and maybe in thinking about it in terms of grief is a good way too, because I
Yeah.
think, for example, like when I lost my dog Nala over the summer, the loss, like albeit painful and surprising, it was still like there was a lot of, I didn't want to sit in the grief so heavily. And sometimes I felt guilty about like how I may be coming off on social media, for example, and like people saying, oh, well, you just
Mhm.
lost your dog and you're on this girls' trip across the country. So there's like
It's
all of
so
these
hard.
judgments we can make on each other about that. That's outside of even just like appearance, but like, how is your, do you have to seem like, do you have to look like you're going through hell to communicate to others that you may be having a hard time? I'd be
Right.
curious how that showed up for you
Well,
also in that grief
I
state.
think like a really interesting subset of this conversation is around identity.
Hmm.
And you were just talking about essentially like, we start to identify with whatever's going on in our lives, right? Or we identify like maybe like your identity is like very built on who you were in high school,
Hmm.
right? Or maybe your identity is really built on like your family and like who your family is in the world, or who you are in your family, or who you're not in your family, right? It could go like kind of positive or negative.
Hmm.
Um, or maybe your identity is really heavily built on your work and your career, right?
Hmm.
And for me, like I was always just like very type A, like, very kind of anxious, like stressed out, like overachiever type person.
Hmm.
That didn't really change or go away, but like it got funky when I got sick because I was still like all of those things, but then I couldn't do a lot of those things. And I really became at odds with myself, right? And so there's just a lot of different examples here, right? Like pregnancy, like a lot of women who read my book will relate to it from that lens of like being pregnant or, having kids. And like that's not an illness, but it comes with other challenges and it changes your body and it changes how you feel. Like one of my friends, I remember her saying like when she got pregnant, she had a really rough pregnancy and she's like, I just kept feeling like this is how you must have felt for like years. And so it's just, and then we started to build these identities. So
Hmm.
for me, like one of my biggest challenges was that I started to really build this identity around being sick. And I started to really build this identity around having, my like having lost my brother and having that in my life. And I started to really build this identity around like I have dysfunctional relationships.
Hmm.
And so it's interesting because, uh, this September marked, um, oh my gosh, how many years? 3 years, 4 years of being Lyme free.
Hmm.
Um, I'm getting married in November
Hmm.
um, of this year. My last engagement ended in November of 2015, and I had a lot of like really low lows, which I'm very, very transparent about in my book. But it's so interesting. Like one thing I've really been going through lately, I would say over like the past 6 months, is like I feel that my identity is shifting a lot. And
Hmm.
I'm landing into this next version of who I am. And, like it's a different person than this person, but this person is also me.
Hmm.
And so I guess the point of this is like, I just feel that we're always growing and changing so much, or that we have the opportunity to. We kind of get to choose it or not, right? Like you get to either play or not. You don't have to be growing and changing and evolving who you are, but you have the opportunity to. So, whatever your identity is right now, whether you identify as being single or being sick or having financial challenges or maybe things are really great right now, but you worry about losing the things that you have. I just think it's so important for all of us to know that we can always reinvent ourselves. We
Mm.
can always like sort of be reborn. I talk about like rebirth a lot in the book, and that it's up to us. Like we actually have the control to be able to do those things.
Mhm. I love what you're saying because it reminds me of one of the things in the book that resonated with me was I think it was something along the lines where you asked like, why am I still struggling? And that voice came in and was like, because I haven't decided to heal.
Yeah, you haven't decided yet.
Yeah, and that was, it was for me, I too had a bit of a miraculous healing in a way from it. Like it seemed like it doesn't add up on paper.
Hmm.
But kind of pursuing that, well, I'm not going to take no for an answer in this healing process. And so when you said that, it really was, I know for me it was that decision, but I'm curious how many people are out there where it's like we think that we're definitely experiencing this identity and this reality. Maybe it is like a chronic illness, for example, where it's kind of like, well, how am I creating that for myself? Right. This is something that we're experiencing for whatever reason. However, that decision of, okay, am I really going to not take no for an answer? Or what can I do to, you know, to the best of my ability, really heal myself and make that decision. So
Hmm.
I'm curious, like for you, what was within that identity, like what were you letting go of in order to like actually, quote unquote, make that decision?
Yeah. Well, so you're talking about like really in the very beginning of the book, and then I circle back to it. But like in the very beginning of the book, I am sitting in my parents' driveway. It's pouring rain, and I have this like breakdown moment where I like am like talking to God or the universe or whatever, something beyond myself, and saying like, "How am I still sick? How has this been going on for years? Like, what did I do, right, in a
Yeah.
past life or in this life that like I have to, you know,
Mhm.
I'm suffering at this level." And I like truly was suffering. Like it was very, very hard to get through a day. I was at the point where I was like praying that God would like take me in my sleep. Like if I'm not meant to be on this planet, like just take me away. And like that's so sad and horrible and dark to like kind of say, but I think we go through periods where we're like, I don't understand this suffering, or I don't understand the purpose of my life, or I don't understand why this challenge is here, or whatever. And I'm not saying there's like answers to all of those questions. I don't know if there are, but what I found within myself was that I was like racking my brain in this moment, like, why? And then, you're right. I had this, like, I heard this like voice or had this knowing or like,
Mhm.
this like movie scene where it was like, you haven't decided yet. Like,
Mhm.
you haven't decided. Something in me or around me responded and
Mhm.
said, like, you haven't decided
Mhm.
that you're actually going to live your life the way that you wanted to. Like there's this part of you that's like okay with the struggle.
Mhm.
And I think a really great example that I use a lot just because it's very visual is and you kind of easy to understand is like on like weight loss journeys. A lot of times what experts will talk about is how like people identify so much with their weight that
Mhm.
they struggle to lose weight because they identify as being the size that they are. And
Mhm.
like sometimes like apply that to anything, right? Like if your weight is not a struggle for you, or if that's not something that you um that connects to you, like there's something else, right? Like we have these ideas like I am a blank person,
Mhm.
or I deserve this or I don't deserve this. And we just kind of have those beliefs playing in our head. And for me, like I'm sick. Like I'm sick was like what I lived by. And
Mhm.
it was like this curse, but then it also became like my gospel. Like it was like my thing. And
Mhm.
it was like easy to say, I got used to saying, even though I hated it, I'm
Mhm.
sorry I can't come. I'm not feeling well today. Like, oh, sorry, mom, I'm late again because I wasn't feeling well this morning. Like it was my excuse for everything. It
Mhm.
was it was my truth, but then it was also my identity. And
Mhm.
so in the car in that moment, what I realized was like, I don't want this to be my identity anymore. And I'm actually willing and ready to give up all those little pieces of like things that like I was so automatically just identifying with. Like I had to almost physically unwind them and separate them out. Like I don't like this isn't my thing anymore. Like if
Mhm.
I'm late, it can just be because I'm bad at being on time. Or, if I don't feel like doing something, it can be for another reason. Like I don't need this sick thing in my life. And
Mhm.
so it opened up my mind to the possibility that healing was an option for me,
Mm.
and that I didn't have to. I had 30 doctors tell me you're never going to get better. So when people do that, like, doctors are like God in human form. I'm like putting that in quotations if you're listening, like, because that's not really what I believe, but I think that's what society teaches us, that like doctors have all the answers. So
Mhm.
when they're telling you something that feels like a death sentence or something of that nature, of course you're going to believe them. And then you're going to make that part of your identity.
Mhm.
And it doesn't have to be like, you get to choose your own path. It doesn't matter if 30 doctors tell you you're never going to heal. Maybe if you believe that healing is a possibility, maybe you can find that 31st doctor who says, actually, I have a cure.
Mhm.
Right. And that's what happened to me. But if I had stopped and I had kept identifying as being a sick person and I had kept believing all these doctors, then I wouldn't have gone to look for the 31st doctor. So, like,
Mhm.
I don't know if it's so much like the law of attraction as it's like the law of like openness. Like, if you're open
Mhm.
and you consider other possibilities, then I think that it's like a higher probability that they're going to float into your orbit. If
Mhm.
you're like, no, I'm sick, that's the end of it. Everyone says that, then that's just how it's going to be.
Mhm. That is such a good point because I think that there's a part of this too that it's like, yeah, the law of attraction, law of openness, and just being able to like receive and pursue another route. And you're right, like there's a lot of like authority figures that we just give our power away to.
Right.
And I totally identify when it comes to like, illness. Like I was told you have fibromyalgia and was put on something also almost received like serotonin syndrome was like very much like a very close
Hmm.
reality based on a prescription I was given that was completely wrong. And that's what kind of woke me up and be like, Jenna, you've really got to be responsible here. And I too had a choice point of, okay, this illness is no longer going to define me. And for me, my experience, what I was feeling, whether it was like diagnosed or not, for me, it was my own delay tactic from doing the things I really wanted to do. I was like, well, let me stay in this job I hate, where I have all this extra fluff time, even though I feel unfulfilled because, I need to go to the doctor's office every other day.
Right.
And so, I think like there's also a layer of this that I'm hearing like kind of like segues into like the like glowing through what you go through and having the
Yeah.
choice through of like, okay, this is my current reality, but can I approach this with like seeing the light at the end of the tunnel and like really being dedicated to that versus all of these other like, I don't know, I feel like all of these other things that can take that reality away from us and make it like, no, 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 that's not there. That's an illusion. That's not possible. And so I'm curious for you, like when you decided to make that decision, I mean, I read your book, so I know a little bit, but when you decided to make that decision, um, like how did things start to just really shift or fall into place for you? Like what kept you also like in that decision?
I think I had to become like a warrior for what I actually wanted.
Mm.
So, like, I'm just trying to think of how to explain this to people so they can like follow along for themselves. But, for me, like, I would think about the things that I wanted. So, like, I wanted to get married, I wanted to have a family. Okay. But then I would envision myself having kids and like being sick and like then not being able to be a good mom. And like that would really like upset me when I'm like that, like I can't get behind that reality fully, right? Or like to find a boyfriend, I needed to like go on dates, and like I didn't feel like going on dates because I didn't feel good. I didn't want to do anything that wasn't like necessary.
Mm.
And and so I like started to like realize that everything I wanted required me to be healthy or healthier.
Mhm.
And so like that became like the central thing. Right. So if health is not your thing, then maybe it's like money, right? Maybe you're like, I really want to buy a house, and like I really want to like send my kids to private school, and I really want to be able to go on more trips. And it's like, yeah, but like we don't have the money. Like, yeah, but we don't have the money. Yeah, we don't have the money. Well, then like the money becomes the thing, right? Like, not that you like become obsessed with money, but like you start to structure your life in a new way where you have a priority and a focus on finances, and
Mm.
you start to shift how you relate to finances. And maybe you get like a financial advisor, and if that one's not helpful, you get another one. If that one's like, you keep going until you find the solutions to your problems. But
Mhm.
like we can't find a solution to our problem until we know what problem we're trying to solve. And
Mm.
so for me, like working around the problem, like trying to date while I didn't feel good, or, you know, trying to like find peace around losing my brother when like I couldn't get out of bed. Like it just was it was like such compounded grief. And how I felt became the central thing that I needed to structure my life around. And
Mm.
so that became like, in coach training, as you know, we talk about like project plans and like goals, and like not just having a goal, but creating a very, very detailed, structured plan to get there. And that became my goal. And I built out a detailed, structured plan. And
Mm.
I'm like, there's just no way. Like, there's no way that there's no reality that exists where someone can cure me. Like, I just don't believe it. Like, if
Mm.
people like beat cancer, why could I not beat Lyme disease? Like, it just didn't make sense to me. And like, I started to call BS on a lot of, yeah, authority figures.
Mhm.
But I think we all have to do that in some way.
Mhm.
Whether it's like, oh, well, my parents always said that we would always have money problems. Like, well, then, like you just get to say, you know what? There's a somebody in our in the IGC community posted something the other day, like just like a meme, like reposted a meme on Instagram, but it said, I screenshotted it. I thought it was so good. It was like, it ran in my family until it ran into me.
Mm.
And
Wow.
it's like, you know, I like, you obviously get it, but like for those who don't, like we get to break up the patterns in our families. Like it's
Mhm.
a pattern until it's not a pattern.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
like you don't have to be a magician or like God to break it up. Like you just have to start. Sometimes it's as simple as start doing the opposite of,
Mhm.
right? Like if the things you saw growing up were like spending and not saving, then like you start saving money. And if your parents never got any advice around money, or if they didn't take care of their health, but then they struggled with their health, like then you get to like start taking care of your health. Like you
Mhm.
get to actually do these things differently. And I think whether it's your family or friends or like job influences, like you were giving a great example, Jenna, like so many people, and this is like the work that you and I both do, but like so many people find themselves in jobs that they hate, and they just kind of are like, well, that's how it is. Says who? That's how it is.
Mhm.
That's not
Mhm.
how it is for everybody. It doesn't matter that I think it's like 14% of people like their jobs. Who says you can't be in the 14%?
Mhm. Mhm.
And who says that those percentages can't change over time if people start to know that they can actually do work that they love, right? I'm just saying, question everything.
Yeah. No, it's so true. And you should question everything. You should like, I think it's important that we always recognize too, like what is it, what we're not changing, we're choosing. And
Hmm.
and we can, very easily have that learned helplessness come about, even if it's from something that's really reasonable. Like what I love about this topic is we're not talking about like, oh, you got a flat tire and you were late to work and your boss is upset. Like this is like, we're talking about chronic illness. We're talking about like ancestral patterns that you get inherited. We're talking about finances. Like these are, heavy cards to be dealt, but the reality is
Hmm.
that you can be dealt those things and still, you know, make the choice to better your situation. And I think
Yeah.
that like shows up in a lot of different ways. And um, I think what I love too, and I'm going to say a little bit of this, but then we'll come back to it. But what I love too in the book that you mention is like in the topic of self-care, for example, and what that really means and looks like. So not only, the looking good externally and how that, may feel good. They even say like if you're working from home, like getting dressed for work can help to change your mood and you'll show
Hmm.
up and carry yourself differently. But this very real like reality of folks thinking that self-care just means getting my nails done, which it does mean doing these things that make you feel good. Maybe that's going for a walk, but that also means doing the really hard things. And so like you're talking about like self-care could be, okay, what really weighs on my heart is my finances. So self-care could
Hmm.
look like, okay, I have my monthly financial planner conversation or
Sure.
things like that. So I'd love to know like from you, what advice you would have for others of like differentiating what is looking good, feeling good, how to kind of pinpoint what's like an appropriate path of self-care. Um,
Yeah. I mean, I think what's coming to me is like, it's actually an exercise that we teach in IGC. It's called the needs inventory. And it's basically like writing down everything that you need. For me, that this was like at the beginning of my self-help coaching, figuring out what was going on with me journey. This was like very, very difficult for me. So if you're like, that sounds hard, it's okay. Just stick with us for a second here. But it's like write out, what are the things that you need? Like I need to feel beautiful. I need to feel healthy. I need to get a massage once a month. I need to have my nails done because if I don't, I like gnaw at them from anxiety. Like I need medication or I need vitamins or I need to take a bath once a week or I need to have open communication with my partner. I need to be able to speak openly with my boss. Like, what are all the things that just like you as a human need?
mm,
And I think that like the thing that's usually blocking it, like if you can't see what you need, it's often because you feel like you shouldn't need it, or someone has told you that like you're too needy, or like there's some kind of idea that like you shouldn't need that much. And
mhm,
I just call complete BS on that because I think that we need a lot. I think that we're dynamic human beings. I think we have big purposes on the planet. I think that it's okay to need or to want or whatever you want to call it more than like, you know, you think other people need or want. The truth is, you have no idea what's going on with other people. So all you can do is focus on yourself. Maybe you need to write out your feelings. Maybe you need to have a therapist. Maybe you need, and then here's the other thing, your needs are constantly changing and in flux. Like, there was a time where like I was seeing my therapist twice a week, and then there was a time that I was like, I actually need to like not do this anymore. Like I need to like not stir in all my shit
right.
once a week or twice a week or ever for a while,
Mhm,
right? And so like, and then there's certain vitamins I'm taking at a certain time and then other ones, and I've been on medication and other
mhm,
times I've not been on medication, right? Not that like you should be changing your regimen if you're working with a doctor or anything like that, but you in many scenarios need to have guidance and partnership around these things. But it's
right.
about setting your standards and setting your standards high, setting your standards where they belong, right? So like I need a doctor. No, I need a doctor who understands me. I needed a doctor who understands the journey that I've been through. I need a doctor who listens, right? I need a partner. No, you don't just need any partner. That was the mistake that I made like quite a few times. Like you need a partner who what?
Mhm,
Right? So like what exactly do you need and then what flavor of it do you need? And I think that like that is fundamentally self-care. It's literally just like caring about yourself.
mm,
Caring about yourself enough to sit down with yourself or do it with a friend and help each other dig these things out, but like caring about yourself enough to ask yourself, what do you need? I still do it to myself all the time. Like, I feel like I'm running on fumes right now with like wedding planning and changes at work and like just all the things. And I'm like, oh, like, Katie, like, what do you need today? You
Mm,
know, what do you need to like get through the day? Or what do you need to have a good day? Or what do you need? And then it makes me a better communicator to my business partner. It makes me a better communicator to my home partner, you know, my fiance, like to my family. And I think that a lot of us are not good at saying what we need because most people are not asked that. We're
mm.
just given things or not given things. Um and I think that's why a lot of us carry kind of anger or resentment that just kind of is always bubbling under the surface. But there's a solution for that.
Mm. Yeah, this self check-in is so key. And it's definitely something that it took me personally even years to learn, I think, as a woman and being very independent. Because some of that caring for the self is asking for support or asking for support from others.
Mm,
It amazes me. Like I have a friend that, we were at a retreat and they had a headache and they asked someone for Tylenol and it was fine. It was fine. She gave her some Tylenol, and then the next day she had a headache again. And I was like, "Why don't you ask, so and so for Tylenol again?" And it was like, "No, no, 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 I can't possibly do that." And so it's amazing that like sometimes we'll reject our needs, what we're really needing, either because we're kind of like, okay, well, I'm just going to be kind of checked out today in this retreat, and that just is what it is, and that's like my identity today, to like not be fully engaged or to not engage with people and talk to them, or just that
hmm.
fear of asking for support and really honoring what we need. And I think too, what you're saying,
Right.
like a lot of it is looking like also like your body, like what does my body need today? And
Right.
I'm a big fan of like your body never lies. That's something I've
Hmm.
learned and taught. And like those check-ins, I think will start to feel like, internally, like what is it that I actually need today? Maybe like getting my nails done is just going to feel like a chore, than like a moment
Hmm.
of self-care. Maybe what I actually need is to, call my boss and, let her know that I need more support on this project. And I think a lot of like what folks like we kind of gloss over is like self-care seems it can be presented in such a superficial way. And one of the things I loved in your book that you pointed out was like, it doesn't matter how much spiritual work or personal development work or any of those things that you've done, like you still need to feel the pain or do the hard work. And sometimes that in and of itself, like you said, like therapy, it's not exactly a walk in the park all the time. Like,
No, but here's the thing, Jenna, it like kind of hurts either way. Like
right.
it hurts to do the work and it hurts to not do the work, but like it's sort of like working out. Like like working out sucks. I think I'm not someone who's like, yay, workout. Like, but I work out pretty much every day. And I do it because I feel better afterwards. And so like it sucks to work out, but it also sucks to like not work out and not move my body. I personally like still deal with some um like after effects of being sick for so long. And if I don't exercise, I actually experience more pain, right? And if I don't take my vitamins, or if I don't like stay on, like I eat a pretty clean diet, like if I don't do that, like I feel it. And so that's going to happen. But for me, it's about like knowing what I need and then getting back to what I need as quickly as I can, without putting undue pressure on myself to have things be so perfect. I try not to be a rigid person, but um, I do have pretty good, built pretty good self-control and self-confidence. Like I'm very confident in the choices that I make because I know that they produce a certain result.
Mm,
And like, there's also another saying that like, today's choices are tomorrow's results, right? Or today's results are yesterday's choices. And
mhm,
so you're not going to see the effects of your good choices right away typically, but it's like either way, like there's challenge, right? It hurts to be in pain, and then it hurts to go face it and go to therapy. It hurts to fight with your partner every day, and it hurts to go to couples therapy and go walk that journey,
mm,
right? But I think this is the life coach. These are the life coaches in us that are like, just go
mhm.
through,
Right.
like
Just power through. Let's go.
Like, yeah, like just do the hard stuff
Yeah.
because that's going to get you the results that you actually want in your life.
Hmm. Wow. I love that because it's just like kind of two sides of the same coin. And there's a choice that we get to make and which side we want to experience and ultimately what that leads to, making that choice of that type of pain or experience that we want to have. So
Right.
I think that's like such a good example. The working out for sure. I'm with you. I'm like, well, every day I'm like, do I have to? But like, yes, I do, because the what you feel after a week of not working out, or what I feel after a week of not working out is not worth not just doing the thing, spending those 45 minutes to just get it done. So I totally
100%.
resonate with that. And I love this like needs inventory and just the need and the ability to know that we have at any point in time, we can make the space for ourselves to stop and say, hey, what is it I actually need today? What is it I need this week, this month, this year? What is it I need more from my partner? And looking at all of those different, like that list of that inventory list, I should say, I think is like really key, and keeping that nearby too. Like I love that, like having that go-to kind of
Hmm.
list of what can I do in the next 30 minutes to like make me feel better or like shift my mood or show myself some love.
Yeah, you can turn it into like a chart, right? Where you're like, what do I need on a monthly basis? What do I need on a weekly basis? What do I need on a daily basis? And like, maybe it's like daily, it's you're drinking the water. Daily, you're like talking to a friend. Daily, you're like, getting dressed in the morning. Like, it's also this like examination of um the connection between like doing and feeling, like what do we do, what action do we take that creates the feeling, or what feeling do we desire, and then backtracking to say like, well, what could I do to create that feeling, and also just being really aware of input and output, because
Mm,
that's what life is. It's like, when I do this I experience this, when I do this I experience this. And it's usually not the doing we're so focused on, or we're so connected to. We're connected to the result, the feeling a certain way or the having a certain thing or whatever. But that comes from an action
mm,
that supersedes the result.
yes, that's so true. A lot of it is like the result we're looking for is actually like a way of being and a feeling or an emotion or that general experience necessarily than like the tangible thing sometimes. And I love the idea of a chart. I feel like we need to get a template of this, like
Yes.
ready for download, because that's such a great idea. And it does, just tying back into like our topic of looking good. I think it's, to me, like a lot of the takeaways from your book and also just our conversation today is that on one hand, we don't know what other people are going through. And like just because the
Mhm.
appearance of one
Mhm.
means that doesn't mean everything, and to like really be kind and to be really receptive to the people's realities when they share them, giving them the benefit of the doubt
Right.
in that way. But also what you're saying about the things that we can do to look and feel good, and how feeling good is also going to radiate into looking good, not in the traditional sense, but just your energy and your aura and your um, how you're showing up in the world too.
Absolutely.
I
They're
love
so
it.
connected.
So connected, and the learning to glow through what you go through too. It's to me that really is like that light in the dark kind of imagery is what it makes me think of, and just like how we can show up as like the contrast and that light when we're going through these
Yeah.
hard times. That's just um yeah, it's just so important, and knowing that we have that power too.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I'm so grateful that you could come on and talk about your book. It's seriously, it's so well done. I'm like, I mean, I've worked with you in the past, so I'm already like impressed by who you be as a businesswoman and everything. But your story is, yeah, your story is so inspirational, and I think it just has like a really great message, and it's an easy read. Like and like a very engaging read, I should say. Like I was on my flight like 4 hours straight reading. Um,
Oh, that makes me happy.
yeah, it was excellent. So where can people find your book and find you?
So the easiest place to get the book is just on Amazon. You can type in "At Least You Look Good" and it will come up, or you can type in my name, Katie DePaola, but I feel like "At Least You Look Good" is easier to spell. Um, and then you can find me on Instagram at It's Katie DePaula. I also encourage you to follow at Inner Glow Circle, which is our company. And you can go to innerglowcircle.com. There's a lot of free resources there. We talk a lot about um, this whole idea of learning to glow through what you go through. And most of the women that come through IGC have been through something significant in their lives. They've, walked through fires to be able to get to where they are. And it's really exciting and inspiring to see those journeys. But I think that it also, as a student, is encouraging to be around women who are equally as motivated to change their own circumstances. But the icing on the cake with IGC is that the women that IGC attracts are actually very committed to making a difference. And one of our core values is to change lives that change other lives, and just recognizing this domino effect of coaching is so cool too. So go to innerglowcircle.com and poke around. There's a ton of free classes and free workshops and resources that I think you would really get a lot of benefit out of.
Yeah, absolutely. And speaking as someone who's gone through the coaching certification program, I definitely can't recommend it enough. It's a great community. It's great resources. You learn a lot about yourself, not just like the logistics of, coaching or whatever the thing that you might be signing up for. So I love what you guys have created. And like you said, that domino effect is so important. Like that's really how we create, systemic change in the world and positivity,
Yeah.
through creating these types of programs and engaging in them and recommending other people to do it. So thanks for creating that for the world.
Thanks, Jenna. Thanks for changing lives that change other lives. And thanks for having me today.
Thank you so much for being a part of the council today. You can share this episode and tag me on Instagram at the DJ Genesis. That's the DJ Jenesis, or on Facebook at the Council Pod. Make sure to leave a review and subscribe. And if you'd like to share your takeaways or what you'd like to see, you can email us at hello@thecouncilpod.com.